I am here to talk to you about epilepsy, new concepts and challenges. So let me start at my beginning. What's the new lexicon of epilepsy? How has the classification of seizures and epilepsy changed in just the past couple of years? How do we think about the comorbidities of epilepsy? And talk a little bit about SUDEP because we have to. If we're not talking about it with our patients, there's a problem. It's a problem when our patients find out about it on the internet and not from us. It's a problem when a family experiences SUDEP in their child and what you hear from them again and again is, no one told me this could happen. So we have to talk about it as a community of professionals. Now, the word seizure comes from the Latin caesere, to take over. That hasn't changed. It's something that takes over us. When Thucydides was the first person to use the term seizure in written language as far as we know, and he talked about the Peloponnesian Wars, and he said Sparta seized Troy. That was the first use of the term in language. It was a military term. But now, of course, by a seizure, we mean something that the brain, it occurs in the brain that takes over the body. Now, the word epilepsy comes from this Greek term, epilambanian. I'm probably mispronouncing it, but that's the way I phonetically say it. But it means recurrent events. So epilepsy is repeated events, right? You have to have at least 2 seizures to have epilepsy. Well, that's changed, so we'll get into that. The word aura comes from the Latin breeze, the breeze before the storm. So it's sort of the warning, but it's really not just a warning. It's the first phase of a seizure. Now, in the migraine world, when we talk about aura, we mean a classical migraine as opposed to a common migraine. In epilepsy, we mean the first part of a seizure. So by that, it used to be said that aura, therefore, was pathognomonic of a focal onset seizure. Now we know that's changed, that people with generalized seizures also report auras. But if the aura has a certain semiology, like when George Gershwin smelled burnt rubber at the barber shop, and that was the first symptom he had of his temporal lobe tumor that killed him, that aura is localizing to the amygdala. It's an uncinate seizure, right? A somesthetic aura, where you have pins and needles feeling, paresthesias along your arm, well, that localizes, of course, to Brodmann area 312, post-central gyrus. But some people with generalized seizures have auras where they just feel like something's going to happen. Now, I don't mean a prodrome. The prodrome is the feeling a person has minutes or hours or days or weeks before their seizure. That's different. So seizures, of course, can be just situational, right? From a fever, hypoglycemia, an impact seizure. But we're distinguishing those situational seizures from epileptic seizures. Of course, epileptic seizures still, this hasn't changed, can be focal in onset or what we call primarily generalized. There's still this argument about chicken and the egg. Don't all generalized seizures have to come from somewhere? There's still a strong debate in the neurophysiology and epilepsy community that there's no such thing as a truly generalized seizure, that they're starting maybe in the brainstem and substantia nigra and subcortical structures. But in terms of clinical purposes and EEG purposes, we still make the distinction between focal onset and generalized, and then the focal was secondarily generalized. So that hasn't really changed. Now, epilepsy is still more or less denotated as recurrent unprovoked seizures. So the traditional definition is a seizure results from an abnormal balance between too much excitation, primarily mediated through glutamate, and too little inhibition, primarily mediated through GABA, gamma-aminobutyric acid. And that epilepsy, of course, would be 2 or more unprovoked seizures, not on the same day, separated by at least 24 hours. And that it's a spectrum of disorders, different types of seizures, different etiologies, lots of syndromes, different comorbidities, overall associated with higher mortality than expected.